everyone. We have Sheryl Bredeson from Kandor Group. As President and CEO of Kandor Group, Sheryl brings a wealth of human resources, expertise, and experience that ranges across multiple industries and company sizes. Leveraging over 21 years of experience in human resource management, including business management, Sheryl leads the company in helping clients achieve and sustain HR compliance objectives, optimize workforce performance, and maximize each client's business. So here's Sheryl.
Great, thank you so much for the introduction. Welcome, everyone. Good morning. How's everyone doing? Awesome. Okay, so I appreciate this opportunity to facilitate this presentation for each of you today. Our topic for today is kind of twofold: effective hiring, and after we hire, well, what do we do? How do we optimize the performance outcomes of the talent that we hire for our organization? And so as we navigate through this presentation, I'll pause at certain moments to field any questions that you may have, or even any comments that you would like to share. I welcome those always. So with that said, our objectives, our workshop objectives for today, within the context of effective hiring, are going to be number one, to proactively manage today's business and hiring challenges. Also, to harness the power of employer branding and technology, achieve and sustain compliant hiring practices, and then we'll also talk about how to maximize efficiency and optimize quality in your organization's hiring practices. Within the context of optimizing workforce performance, we will talk about how to support a successful transition from being a peer to a boss. Also, we'll talk about how to go about setting expectations and engaging in an interactive feedback exchange with your employees to really get the most out of those conversations. We'll also talk about measuring and managing performance, progress, and results. And we'll wrap things up with recognizing the difference between coaching and corrective action when it comes to performance management. So these are the things that you can expect to get out of today's workshop this morning. All right, so today's hiring challenges. Well, from a business standpoint, all of our businesses today, as we all know, are faced with challenges, evolving challenges day to day. One of those to be increasing revenue, because that's kind of as a goal as well as a challenge. Also managing costs. I know with the COVID pandemic, I have a lot of clients that I deal with that are experiencing just increasing constant challenges with managing costs, like whether it be for raw materials, whether it be the cost of labor, because the demand for market pay is increasing. Also optimizing productivity with respect to operational processes, maximizing profitability, and sharpening workforce skills. So those are some common business challenges that companies today are faced with within the context of hiring. And so we have to focus on how do we identify the best talent to help us as a business address those business challenges and keep those challenges managed. In terms of hiring, well, competing for top quality talent, that's a challenge I see across all industries, within the Houston area, as well as within other states as well, because it's tough out there trying to recruit and hire and retain the best quality talent, because you're competing with other employers, not necessarily in your same industry, because a specific job function, let's just say IT or with marketing or whatever it may be, a lot of times those job functions are transferable into different industries. And so you're competing with companies in different industries, a lot of times with the same exact kind of talent. Also, another hiring challenge is matching candidate skills to job skills. As companies outsource, offshore more and more and more, a lot of the transactional type of activities and duties, companies now more so are looking for what are now known as knowledge workers. You know, we're looking for talent that has the ability to think innovatively, not saying it at different levels as more transactional type of jobs are being offshored and outsourced. Sustaining loyalty and commitment, that's another common hiring challenge that companies are faced with today. Because again, it's competitive. You have companies right down the street that are offering more money, or maybe a more flexible, more attractive work schedule, or some other type of benefit offering that's more attractive and relative to what the current organization is offering. And then, of course, meeting and sustaining pay and benefit expectations. That's another common hiring challenge. Another one that I see too, that's not necessarily listed on here, I see this a lot in industries in companies that employ workers, I would say semi-skilled workers, is the challenge to get people to show up for an interview. I don't know, are any of you experiencing that same challenge? Yes, that's everywhere. And it's like, okay, what's the deal here? I know there's some theories out there of, are people just checking off a box so they can keep collecting the unemployment? Maybe, maybe not, don't know. But that is a common challenge, to get people to show up for the interview. And so one way that I've helped my clients address that is to tweak the interview in the hiring process. It can't be a long, extensive process. Now, for certain positions, it needs to be. And you're not going to have an issue, you know, with a VP of operate, they're going to show up for their interview. But for those job functions where you're seeing that trend, no comment, you have to modify the interview and hiring process. You know, going from maybe 2 or 3 interviews, it's got to shrink down to maybe on the spot interview and then make a decision within a day or 2. So depending upon the job function, of course, you don't want to sacrifice quality. But that's what I have had to advise multiple clients of ours to do, got to tweak the process. And it worked, it's worked. It's not ideal. Well, you know, ideally we'd like to go back the old way, but the old way just doesn't work anymore. So you might want to take a look at just modifying the hiring process and shortening it up a bit. Questions or comments that you'd like to share on business and hiring challenges? Anything that you have seen or are experiencing that may not be listed on here? Okay. All right, so employer branding, when it comes to hiring, again, like I've mentioned many times, it's a competitive market out there. You're competing with other companies. And so it's sometimes, I don't know if you've also seen this trend, you post a job and nothing. It's like, where are the resumes? And you posted the same job before, maybe a year ago or a few years ago or a month ago, and you had a lot of traffic coming in, and you post another job and it's crickets. That's very common. So what we have advised our clients to do is to really focus on building a brand for your company. And to do that, and what that means is it's almost like marketing your company's product or service. It's the same exact concept. Because in order to sell your company's product and or service, it takes marketing, right? It's the same exact concept when it comes to selling, marketing and selling this is where you want to work. You're marketing and selling your company to the labor market. And so, because the idea is you want to create enough consistent presence in your target labor market, and enough visibility to where people come to you, and you're not having to hunt and source and invest all this time and energy to find people. I mean, you're still gonna have to do that, but you will kind of want to balance. You want people to come find you as well. And so ways to build that brand, and it's an ongoing process. It's not just a, 1 week we'll do branding, and no, it's an ongoing thing. Find out, what are your employees saying about it? What is it like to work here? Take a poll on what your employees are saying. Because what your employees are saying, what they're thinking while at work, is what they're saying when they're not at work. And that does have an impact on building a reputation for your company. Find out what they're saying. Maybe do a survey, just something very simple to get an idea of what they're saying. Identify some best practices within your company. Maybe your company does an outing, a social event once a month or something like that. Well, take photos of it and post it on your company's Instagram. Make sure employees are aware and you get their consent and you're gonna take their photo. But also tell a story and publish testimonials from your employees. I've seen companies take a video, a quick 20-second, 30-second, maybe 1 minute max video of an employee. Hey, tell us what it's like to work here. Why should someone come and apply to work here? And when your target labor market sees that, wow, that's pretty cool. That looks like fun. That's going to help drive candidate traffic to your organization. Also, what's important is to evaluate the candidate experience. This is so important. When you have candidates apply for jobs, especially ones that go through an interview process with your company, has this ever happened to you? How frustrating is it? You apply for a job, you go for the interview, never hear back. Very frustrating. And I know we're all busy, and sometimes we don't have, believe me, I know it's like, gosh, I don't have time to get back with every single person. It is so important to acknowledge, provide some sort of follow-up, especially the candidates that interview with you, as to what their status is. And so what we've done with our clients is set up a workflow that really leverages automation, especially if you have high volume recruiting going on. You don't have time to send an email to every single person. Create a template email, which is possible in Outlook, or maybe if you use an applicant tracking system, something to send to that person. If you don't have the time to pick up the phone and call after the person's interview, something. So that way they're aware of their status. That really goes a long way. Because remember, maybe it was a great person, but maybe not the right fit right now. Well, a year from now, you may say, hey, let's reach back out to Sally. Well, you want Sally to have a positive candidate experience with you, not remember a poor one, never heard back from that company. So when you contact Sally a year later about a different opportunity, Sally's gonna remember. You got back with her, even though you told her, hey, the process is competitive, you decided to move forward with someone else. She's gonna remember that. Goes a long way. And once you build that automation, it's very efficient. And it also helps to manage call-ins. I'm just checking on the status of my application. I'm just checking on the status. Oh my gosh. To set an expectation on when people can expect to hear back on their status. Very important. Leveraging technology. You want to do that as much as possible when it comes to employer branding, and that's to optimize efficiency as much as possible. And like the social media, you want to, a lot of company industries and companies within those industries, their target labor markets, they're all on social media, Facebook, Instagram, maybe not every single one of these platforms, TikTok, it kind of just depends. And so to target the group you need is you want to find out which platforms are these people on, if any. With some industries and companies, they're just not, but most of them are. Find out which platforms they're on and build a presence on those platforms. And not just, I'll give you an example. So let's say your target labor market, they're all on Instagram. Well, yes, you can build a careers page on Instagram, but that may not be entirely the best approach because not everyone is going to go to, oh, I'm looking for a job with a careers page. Build a page that has content that is exciting and interesting to your target labor market. I'll give you an example. One of our clients has a lot of preschools. And so the idea is, okay, well, let's build a page, not just here's what jobs we have. No. That'll be on the page, but let's also incorporate on that page content and stuff that our target labor market would be interested in clicking on and reading on. Maybe it's top 10 ways to be the best teacher, or click here to learn your teaching style, stuff like that. People are, everyone loves to click on the little box, the little link and take the survey and see what their style is and all that kind of stuff. That kind of content is going to help drive people to the page. And then they say, oh, wow, cool, I can work there too, click there. So those are some ways to really leverage the technology, and it's an ongoing thing, especially if you have high recruiting needs. It's an ongoing thing, not just, this weekend and then that's it. Engage with your audience online. Maybe have a moderator setting built in. You're going to allow people to post on your Facebook page. Obviously, you don't want a whole bunch of stuff that's not appropriate or relevant to be posted. So you can moderate that stuff. But when people post, engage with them, like it, or reply back. Hey, great conversation starter. Or hey, thanks for your feedback. Something to get them engaged and get conversations started. Maybe they're not looking for a job that day that they're on your page and that the day that you liked their comment, but the more you keep in front of them, they're going to remember you. And when they are looking for a job, they're going to remember you. Or maybe they know someone who needs a job that's right in line with what you're looking for. And that increases the chances of the person referring whoever it is they know to you. Referrals are key too. And of course, when possible, track your activity in data so you can measure your efforts, especially if you're investing a lot of dollars in job postings and stuff like that, because those get very expensive. And so it's important to track and measure what kind of return on investment are you getting from all these dollars that are being spent, whether job postings or business page on Facebook or something like that. Because if you're not getting the right return on investment, okay, well then what do we need to change? So employer branding, marketing, very important. Questions or comments? Okay. All right, so now let's talk about effective, hiring. Let's talk about how to do it in a compliant manner. Now, we could probably talk for days on this subject, so I'm just going to kind of give you some summarized bullet points here. But when you're interviewing candidates, and it's important to ensure that the questions you're asking are related to the job. Very important. And I know yes, it's also important to have some kind of conversation here, if you will. And I'll give you some examples of some best practices on that. But for the most part, you want to keep your questions job related to the job. Not asking about tell me about your skill sets in some other area or some other field. Also, we want to avoid asking interview questions that ask for information, and this is kind of pretty obvious or straightforward, but we want to avoid asking questions that could unintentionally reveal information that falls into a protected category. And this can happen very unintentionally. I'll give you some examples. One example, hey, I went to that high school too. When did you graduate? Well, statistically speaking, people graduate at age 18. It's okay to ask when did you graduate from the university? Because people statistically go to universities at all different ages, but high school statistically 18. Again, very easy. I graduated there too. I was class of, 99. What about you? Don't ask that. Because the minute, your intentions are pure, but the minute they reveal, oh, I'm class of 65, and then you don't hire them, you could run the risk of getting an EEOC letter in the mail for age discrimination, even though that was not your intention at all. Other questions that I've heard, I've seen people ask just totally innocently, oh wow, that's an interesting last name. What is that? Is that German or Russian or whatever? That could reveal national origin. And the minute you know that and you don't hire the person, now you may get that letter from the EEOC in the mail. Also, when are you due? Even though it might be completely obvious the person is expecting a baby, that it's not relevant when they're due. The question, and I understand where a manager might be wanting to go with that. The question is, this is the job. When you get to the job function, these are the job duties, and these are the physical requirements of the job. And of course, you want to ask this of all candidates. Can you perform each of these essential job functions safely and effectively? Yes, no. Do you need any accommodations? Reasonable accommodations, so you can do that? Yes, no. Okay, that's the question. Also, how many kids you have? Not relevant. And I see hiring managers ask that question because what they're trying to gauge is this person going to be able to get to work on time consistently every day? I've seen employees that have 0 kids and can't get to work. Then I've seen employees with 6 kids, no attendance problem. So the question becomes, and this is a hard one because you really don't know until the person starts. The question is, okay, this is the job, this is the schedule, this is the work schedule, Monday through Friday, 8 to 5, whatever it is. Can you consistently be here these days, these times? Yes or no? You can also ask, do you have reliable transportation? That's perfectly fine too. We don't care if they own a car, if they take Uber, a bike, we don't care, as long as they do it safely, of course. Do you have a reliable way to get here? That's the question. And sometimes I've seen candidates say, well, I don't have a car. Okay, all right. So what, can you give me kind of an idea of what your method to get here would be? What is it? Well, yeah, my family member takes me. Okay, and if with one of our clients, the work schedule can fluctuate a lot. So the question to that candidate is, okay, well, this source of transportation that you have, whoever it is, are they able to accommodate at a moment's notice a change in your schedule? Yes, that's all you need to know. Now, will you know that with certainty at the time of the interview? No, you won't know until the person shows up, starts the job. That's a risk you take. Okay. Another common one that I've seen is, this job, it's very dangerous here. We have a lot of safety rules and stuff. You ever been hurt on the job before? Can't ask that. Again, I see this, I hear this asked just by accident, very innocently. No, again, the question is, these are the working conditions. These are the safety requirements. Can you meet these requirements? Okay, tell me, how did you meet the safety requirements in your last job? Ask, that's a perfectly fine question to ask. How did you learn the safety requirements? How did you meet those requirements? What were some of the challenges you had with meeting the safety requirements in the last job? Those are the questions that are going to give you the most insight into what you're trying to find out. Also, I'm sure, how many of you have heard of behavioral-based interviewing questions? So, a question of, are you a team player? Well, who's going to answer no? No, I'm not a team player. No, of course they're going to say yes, of course. No, and that's great. And that's fine to ask that question. But the question you really want to ask is, okay, so tell me about a time when you were on a team and you had a disagreement. How did you handle that? What was the disagreement? How did you handle it? What was the outcome? What did you learn from it? What would you do differently? Those are the questions you want to ask. The best indicator of future performance is past performance. And to get an idea of past performance, you want to ask behavioral-based interviewing questions. And some other examples include, let's say the job requires a lot of attention to detail. Mistakes have to be minimal to zero. Okay, well, again, do you have a lot of attention to detail? Yes, fantastic. Tell me, what is your approach to making sure your work is done correctly? Walk me through, how do you do that? And have them explain that to you. Also, ask the person, tell me about a time when you made a mistake. Now, if someone says, I've never made a mistake in my life, that's probably not realistic. And they'll ask them, tell me about the mistake. What happened? What did you do? What did you learn from it? You know, what measures did you apply so that mistake that doesn't happen again? That's going to give you insight into their thought process. And it's also, and the behavioral interviewing questions are excellent questions to knock out what I call professional interviewers. Anyone can say, yep, I'm a team player. Yep, I got attention to detail. Yep, I am a great negotiator. That's easy. It's a lot more difficult to come up on the spot with an example of a time when you were on a team and had a disagreement. That's very difficult to make up all that on the spot. And someone that doesn't have the experience you're looking for that you need in those, what I call soft skills, they won't be able to answer that question. And then you'll be able to see right through that pretty quickly. Interview documentation. When interviewing candidates, it's important to keep notes on your interviews with these candidates. Now, you don't need to write a dissertation or book, you know, just some simple notes that you can read and make sure that your notes are always objective. There's no protected information on those notes, because remember, anything and everything is discoverable. So if there were ever to be a EEOC charge, a lawsuit, and I'm sure our folks in the back would agree to this, if you're sued in the future, those notes could be subpoenaed. Give me your notes. And I've seen situations, I've seen cases in the past where the manager wrote, just innocently, made a mistake, wrote down the person looks old, or person is of this race, or person's pregnant. No, don't write that stuff. Don't write that stuff down because it's not relevant. All right, and keep your notes. Now I know I like to reduce paper as much as possible. And so scan them, or if you don't handwrite, type them. Maybe make a a file in your computer or your Outlook or something where you have your notes kept. Just make sure they're kept on some kind of network or server, not on a hard drive and they're gone. Questions about the split?
So I think I do, because
Yes.
we work with multiple clients as a bookkeeper, and we will run payroll, help them process payroll taxes. Sometimes they try to ask HR, and we have to say we're not HR, we're not HR advisors. But I know a lady, if you ever need a referral, they will get into, well, I can ask whatever question I want to right to work state. So, and then I just say, well, if you want consulting advice, let me know and I'll connect you with someone. But what would you say to someone that reached out to you to say, it's a right to work state? I can ask whatever question I want, I can hire and fire whoever I want.
Oh, the manager is saying this? Okay, so that's an excellent question. And one thing I want to clarify, and I hear this all the time, right to work state, because I know what you're thinking. Employment at will is what you're thinking. Employment at will is a completely separate thing from right to work state, and I'll tell you the difference. Employment at will in Texas and I believe in most other states, it basically means that unless you have a formalized contract of employment with clear stipulations, this person will be employed for 1 year, all that kind of stuff. Employment at will basically means that the employer and or employee can end the employment relationship at any time, with or without advance notice, and for any reason within the parameters of local, state, federal laws. So right to work state means it has to do with unions. And so I don't know which states are not right or are not right to work states. I think every state is right to work, but I think decades ago, if a state was not right to work state, it meant that if you go work for that company, you must go join the union. And if you're not familiar with unions, the purpose of a union, well, decades ago, was to create better working conditions for the workers, create better pay for the workers, because the conditions were very, very bad many, many decades ago. But that's really not the case anymore. But unions still exist. So right to work means, hey, I can go work for that. And yes, that company has a union, like UPS, for example. They're a unionized company. But employees can go work for UPS and they can choose, do they want to join the union or not? It's entirely optional. That's what right to work is. And so they're talking about employment at will. And so theoretically, yes, you can, hire, fire whoever you want, whenever you want. Here's the reality is the minute you fire someone for whatever reason, or you don't hire someone for whatever reason, the reality is that person, anyone can file an EEOC charge. Anyone can sue you for anything, anyone. So the reason why you want to be able to always demonstrate that, no, the reason why we didn't hire this person was because she has no job stability, or maybe the reason why we terminated this person was because after 2 write-ups for poor performance, just hypothetical example, she still couldn't get it, we gave her training. You want to be able to defend yourself, because if you have none of that, if you just terminated someone, just don't like that person, and that person comes back and says, no, I was terminated because I'm pregnant. How are you going to defend yourself? That's the reality. And it's very, very difficult to defend yourself when you didn't have a reason. I mean, maybe your real reason, you just didn't really like the person. And that's fine. But now it's gonna cost a lot of money and time to defend yourself, to say, no, it's not because she's pregnant. Does that help answer that question? Yes, yeah. I hear that all the time. That's an excellent question. And sometimes it's challenging for managers to go through a corrective action process or a performance improvement process, go through the motions. Sometimes that can be frustrating and challenging. But I can tell you in most instances it's very necessary, because when it comes time to end the employment relationship with Billy or Susie or whoever it is for their poor performance, go through the motions, they still can't get it. It's just not the right fit for the job. You cut ties. When they go file the EEOC charge and say, no, I was terminated because I'm this race, or because I'm over 40, or because I'm pregnant, whatever the case is, you have a defense. No, he was hired for this. We interviewed him. Interview went well. We gave him training. We gave him a performance improvement plan or corrective action, whatever you want to call it. We gave him a reasonable time to improve. We still couldn't do it. That's your defense. Okay. Any other questions? Okay. All right. Okay. Other pieces to compliant hiring: background checks, drug testing, and references. So background check, background check is a general term that could mean so many different things. Because people ask me all the time, well, what if they don't pass the background check? Well, what is it we're checking? Because a background check could encompass criminal background check, motor vehicle check, credit check, education verification, past employment history check, all that kind of stuff. So before you perform any kind of background check, not just criminal, you're investigating any of that kind of stuff. You must obtain a written consent and authorization from the person in order to be able to do that. And so I always recommend that you have that authorization and consent form included with your employment application that candidates complete as part of the process for applying for employment. And they sign the background check and authorization consent form. It doesn't mean that you will in fact run the check. It just, that way you've got it. And so at a certain point in the process, the interview process, if it comes to that time to run the background check, you've got the authorization and consent. And you also have to make sure that you are providing candidates with a notification of what's called their FCRA rights, stands for Fair Credit Reporting Act rights. Now, that doesn't mean you must check credit. That's just what the law is called. And so basically, what this law does is, let's say the results of the background check, something on it came back bad information. Maybe they have a felony, maybe whatever it is. And now I don't want to move forward with this person. Or maybe you offered the job to the person contingent upon results of background. You got the background check and there's stuff on there they didn't disclose in the interview process. And you're like, no. Well, now you have to provide what's called a pre-adverse action notice. This is a technical term under the FCRA. You have to notify the person, hey, we got your background check results in, here's a copy of it. And if any of this information is wrong, incorrect, incomplete, you need to provide us with the complete and corrected information within, like, the standard of 7 days. Because sometimes maybe the court records are wrong. Rarely that's the case, but sometimes that happens. And otherwise, if we don't receive anything from you by X date, then we will make our final determination based upon the information that we do have. You let the time lapse, I didn't receive anything. Make sure the person, call the person. It's always good to have a conversation with the person, the candidate over the phone, to explain to them before you email them their pre-adverse action notice of what their background check results said. Because when they get this pre-adverse action letter, they're gonna be like, what is this? They don't even know what that is. And so you don't get anything and you decide, no, we're gonna withdraw the offer or not offer at all, then you have to send what's called an adverse action notice to the person. That says, basically, we've decided not to move forward with you, or we've decided to withdraw the offer. So that's required. The employment application and offer letter, I know I mentioned employment application a few moments ago. This is important to have in the interview process because it captures pertinent information about the candidate, work history. It's like it's a legal document and it's an affirmation of the person affirming, I worked here. You can also ask on the application, do you have any felony convictions, misdemeanors, deferred adjudication? You want to capture that information. And you want to have the person sign the employment application. A resume, anyone could have written a resume. And a lot of times information on a resume, it's not going to give you information you need to know in the interview process, criminal background. I'm trying to think of some other questions. Reason for leaving, stuff like that. And so an employment application is important to have. Also, offer letters. When it comes time to offer a person the job, it's important to document that offer in the form of the offer letter. Very simply constructed. Congratulations. We would like to offer you the full-time position of inventory coordinator, reporting to Susie Smith, supervisor, at a pay rate of $20 an hour. Here's the work schedule. Here's the targeted start date, pending background check and all that kind of stuff. And so that way there's not a question as to, did you offer the job? What? No, she offered me $30 an hour. No, let's look at the offer letter. Another thing that you have to do, and I know I kind of jumped around a little bit, when you do drug testing, drug and or alcohol testing, you cannot send a person for drug and or alcohol testing without having first offered the job. You can perform a background check on the person, make sure you've got the consent form signed, but you cannot send someone for drug or alcohol testing until you've offered the job to them. And you also have to have a signed consent on the drug and alcohol testing too. And so I have a client that they sent me an email a few weeks ago with the drug test results, positive for all kinds of stuff. And I said, and they said, what do we do? And I said, well, send me her offer letter. What? What offer? Oh, I don't know. They forgot to implement the process I had advised them to implement like a year ago. That process being, you need to offer the job first, verbally, and then in writing, then you send them for the drug screen. So for that situation, I told them, with this person, if you want to, they didn't want to hire this person based upon what was on there. So I said, they said, and we tried to call her, but she's not calling us back. And I said, leave it alone. Just leave it alone. If she calls back, then start the process over again, offer the job. You're gonna have to send her for drug testing again, and then go from there.
For your clients starting at the very basic application, do you help clients revise an existing application or come up with a new one?
Yes, both.
Your company does.
Yes, ma'am. Absolutely. All right. So we're running a little short on time here. So I'm gonna go through these last slides here. So now that you've hired, or with this, now we're gonna talk about optimizing workforce performance. It's very common to promote from within, and that's always a good thing. Now, sometimes it can be a little bit of a challenge if we're going from being a peer to a boss. Because now, you used to go out to the bar, or the restaurant or wherever with certain individuals, and now you're having to manage them and hold them accountable. Sometimes that transition can be challenging. So ways to facilitate that transition and manage that transition, that dynamic. Number one, what I advise new supervisors that go from peer to boss is, okay, now set expectations with your employees and make sure they understand, hey, I know we used to go to the mall every Saturday, or we used to do all. Now that I am your manager, you have to understand I'm going to be holding you accountable for your job, okay? And also clarify your new responsibilities as a manager to your employees. Let them know I'm here to help you be successful. And I'm going to give you feedback, positive feedback, and also feedback you may not necessarily agree with, but that's to your benefit. Also establish mutual understanding of accountability and ensure that any non-work related activities are always done as a group. If you're a new supervisor, don't just pick one or two of your favorite employees and go to lunch with them and only them. A group always is recommended. Okay, 4 key components to optimizing workforce performance, just in general. When you hire the person, now you gotta manage it. And the ways to manage the persons include, number one, setting expectations. If people don't know what is expected of them, it creates a confusing mess. And don't assume, well, they should know what it is. Never assume, always have a conversation to clarify what you expect. And sometimes you gotta have the same conversation a few times. That's okay. Observe and monitor. Now that doesn't mean micromanage every single second, but make sure you keep some visibility on your employees' performance so you know how they're doing. Sometimes they may be doing something wrong and they're not aware. So it's important to observe and monitor. When you make observations, whether it's excellent performance or something not so excellent, you want to bring it to their attention. Sometimes that's not always an easy thing to do if it's like something poor performance, but it is important to bring your observation to their attention. Not 6 months later, what I call in real time. And respond in real time. Hey, tell me about what happened yesterday. I noticed you sent this file, but it wasn't the right one. What happened? How can we make sure that doesn't happen again? What do you need from me as your manager to make sure that doesn't happen again? That little conversation most of the time resolves performance problems very quickly. Okay? When you're setting expectations with employees, use the SMART method. How many of you have heard of that? The SMART goal setting method. Be specific. Be a better team player. Well, what does that mean? Be a little bit more specific. In other words, communicate with your teammates. Participate in the conversation. Make sure that your expectations are measurable, some way to measure the person's progress. Make sure that the expectations that you're setting are aligned with the purpose of the job and the goals of the organization. Something that, I'm trying to think of a non-relevant expectation. The job is to monitor inventory, and you set an expectation to, make sure your hair is styled. That's not aligned, that's not relevant. Make sure that the goal or the expectation is realistic. If someone has not been trained on how to meet that expectation, they need to get the training. If someone maybe doesn't understand, okay, find out what it is they don't understand. Make sure that they have a reasonable amount of time to accomplish whatever it is you're needing for them to accomplish. And if something has to be done by a specific date, mutually have a conversation about and establish a target date. Sometimes things don't have a date, like, communicate effectively. Okay, well, let's make a target date on when we can make that improvement. But to sustain that improvement in communication, that's an ongoing thing. And then observing and monitoring, focus on actual behaviors and performance outcomes. And again, have conversations in real time, not 6 months later. Okay? Seeking to understand, if you make an observation about some like poor performance, for instance, don't just assume you think you know why that happened. Have a conversation. The best way to uncover a reason, the why behind the what, is through a conversation. Hey, tell me about what happened with that customer yesterday. Why did that happen? What are your thoughts? What do you think could be done differently? Conversations go a long way. Okay. Coaching, our final slide here, coaching and corrective action. Coaching is an informal process and can be done at literally any time. But sometimes it doesn't take long to do. Coaching can happen in a few seconds or minutes by telling someone, hey, great job yesterday in handling that difficult customer on the phone. I know that was difficult. You did an excellent job at de-escalating the tension, did an excellent job at finding a solution. Great. Or maybe it's, hey, what happened yesterday with that customer? What do you think could be done differently? So coaching is an ongoing thing. You want to reinforce desired performance and behaviors, and you want to help the person correct undesirable stuff. Now, sometimes when coaching, you're doing coaching, it's not working, then we have to progress to corrective action, something that's more formal, documented. Hey, we've talked about this issue multiple times, it's still not getting fixed. We have to have a more formal discussion here and document this discussion on a form that needs a signature. Sometimes a situation may be egregious enough where coaching is not appropriate. Like, for example, I'm trying to think, maybe someone was very rude to a customer. You don't want to terminate them, but coaching, no, we need more than a slap on the wrist. It may be appropriate to resort right to corrective action for how rude they were to the customer that one time. So it's a judgment call. All right, so questions to wrap things up. Okay, well, with that said, I do appreciate everyone's attendance and participation. I hope you got something out of today's workshop. If you do have any questions, comments, feedback, please ask away either now or after the presentation. And here's my contact information. And if you ever have a question or need some assistance, you're welcome to reach out to me. Thank you again.